A 30-year-old single mother and ER nurse is driving to her first blind date in 3 years, wearing the one nice dress she owns and running precisely on time, when she sees it, a car flipped on its side on the highway, smoke rising, and no emergency vehicles in sight yet. Camila Santos has exactly 3 seconds to make a choice. Keep driving to the blind date her best friend spent weeks setting up, or stop to help because she's a nurse and someone in that car might be dying. It's not really a choice. Camila pulls over, kicks off her heels and runs down the muddy embankment in her dress because saving lives is what she does, even when it means destroying her only chance at a normal evening. She reaches the overturned car to find a teenage girl trapped inside, conscious but bleeding. And for the next 40 minutes until the ambulance arrives, Camila is on her knees in mud and broken glass, keeping pressure on wounds, keeping the girl talking, keeping her alive. By the time the paramedics take over, Camila is covered head to toe in mud, blood on her hands and dress, her hair a disaster, and she realizes with horror that she's 40 minutes late to a blind date with a man she's never met who is probably long gone. But she drives to the restaurant anyway because she promised her best friend Anna she'd try, even though she knows no man, especially not a successful businessman like Anna described, would wait 40 minutes for a woman he's never met. Camila walks into the upscale restaurant looking like she crawled out of a swamp, and there he is, Leonardo Costa, sitting at their table checking his phone, clearly annoyed. He's exactly as Anna described, tall, handsome, impeccably dressed in a suit that probably costs more than Camila's monthly rent, and when he looks up and sees her covered in mud and blood, his expression is pure shock. "I'm so sorry," Camila starts, tears welling in her eyes from exhaustion and embarrassment and the adrenaline crash. "I know I'm late and I look terrible, and I completely understand if you want to leave, but I was driving here and there was an accident, and there was a teenage girl trapped, and I'm a nurse, and I couldn't just drive past someone dying, and I tried to hurry, but I had to make sure she was stable, and I'm so sorry." She's rambling, crying, ready for Leonardo to walk away. Instead, he goes completely still. His face loses all color. And then he says, in a voice that's barely a whisper, "You stopped for an accident." This story has a man whose 18-year-old sister, Maria, died in a car accident 5 years ago because 7 cars drove past before someone finally stopped to help, by which time it was too late. A nurse who shows up to a first date looking like a disaster. But with the knowledge she just saved a life, Leonardo, who looks at this muddy, bloody, crying woman and sees exactly the kind of person he thought no longer existed in the world, the moment when he says, "My sister died," because no one stopped. You stopped. You're the first person I've met in 5 years who I know would have stopped for Maria. Camila's confusion and exhaustion turning to shock when Leonardo orders her a drink, asks her to sit, and says, "Please, tell me about the girl you saved." The evening that transforms from disaster to something profound as Leonardo listens to Camila talk about why she became a nurse, about her 7-year-old daughter Sophia, who she's raising alone after her ex left, about her exhaustion and struggles and why she almost didn't come tonight. The moment when Leonardo looks at her and says, "I'm going to marry you someday." And Camila laughs thinking he's joking, but he's completely serious. And 6 months of dating where Leonardo proves he means every word. Falling in love with Sophia, supporting Camila's brutal nursing shifts, showing her that good men exist, and some of them even wait 40 minutes for muddy nurses who stop for accidents. What happens when your worst first date becomes the beginning of forever because you chose to save a life instead of save face? Subscribe now and hit that notification bell because YouTube only shows the ending of this story to our most engaged viewers. If you're not subscribed, you might miss how this disaster of a first date becomes the love story that changes everything. Drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from because we love connecting with our global community over these powerful stories about character and choosing to help. Don't miss what happens when a single mother arrives to her blind date covered in mud and blood, and the millionaire businessman discovers she's exactly the person his sister needed 5 years ago. Camila Santos had exactly 37 reasons why she shouldn't be going on this blind date, and her 7-year-old daughter Sofia represented about 35 of them. "Maman, you look pretty," Sofia announced from the bathroom doorway, watching Camila apply the minimal makeup she owned. "Is this the date Tia Anna keeps talking about?" "Yes, baby, and you're going to have so much fun with Tia Anna tonight. She said you're having pizza and watching that princess movie you love." "I know. But Mama—" Sofia's face turned serious in that way 7-year-olds get when they're trying to sound grown up. "What if he's mean? What if he doesn't like me?" Camilla's heart cracked. Sofia had never met any man Camilla dated. Not that there had been anyone to meet in. The 3 years since Sofia's father Rafael had decided being a parent was too hard and disappeared to São Paulo. This Leonardo Costa was the first date Camilla had agreed to since the divorce, and only because her best friend Anna had been relentlessly persistent. "If he doesn't like you, then he's not worth my time," Camilla said firmly, kneeling down to Sofia's height. "But baby, this is just dinner, just meeting someone new. It might not lead anywhere. But what if it does? What if you like him? Then we'll figure it out together. You and me. Always together. Okay?" "Okay, Mama." Camilla kissed Sofia's forehead, grabbed her purse, the one nice bag she owned, and headed out. She'd borrowed this dress from Anna, a simple navy blue that Anna swore made you look sophisticated instead of exhausted. And she'd even splurged on getting her hair done that morning. She looked, she had to admit, better than she had in months. The restaurant was in the upscale part of Rio de Janeiro, about 40 minutes from Camilla's small apartment in the suburbs. She left with plenty of time to spare, driving her beat-up 2010 Honda that made concerning noises but still ran. She was 28 minutes into the drive, making good time, when she saw it. A car on the side of the highway, flipped on its side, smoke rising from the engine, broken glass scattered across the road. No ambulance yet, no police cars, just a few other vehicles slowing down to look, but not stopping. Camilla's foot moved too, the brake before her brain fully processed the decision. She couldn't not stop. She was a nurse, an ER nurse who'd spent 8 years dealing with trauma and emergencies. Someone in that car could be dying, and Camilla physically could not drive past someone dying even if it meant ruining her one chance at a normal evening. She pulled over, hazard lights flashing, kicked off her heels. They were Anna's too, and definitely not appropriate for running down a muddy embankment, and ran toward the overturned car in bare feet and her borrowed dress. "Hello," she shouted. "Can anyone hear me? I'm a nurse. I'm here to help." A weak voice from inside the car. "Help. Please." Camilla dropped to her knees in the mud and broken glass, looked into the car through the shattered window, and felt her heart drop. A teenage girl, maybe 16 or 17, was trapped in the driver's seat, blood running down her face from a head wound, her left arm clearly broken at an unnatural angle. "Hi. Sweetheart, I'm Camilla. I'm a nurse. I'm going to help you. What's your name?" Juliana. Am I going to die?" "Not today, I promise. But I need you to stay awake for me, okay? Tell me about yourself. Are you in school?" Camilla worked while she talked, checking Juliana's pulse, elevated but steady, assessing the head wound, bleeding but not arterial, putting pressure on the deepest cut with a scarf from her purse. She called 192 for an ambulance, gave them the location, was told emergency. Services were en route, but traffic was bad, and it might take 30 minutes. 30 minutes. Camilla had been planning to arrive at the restaurant in 15 minutes. She stayed with Juliana, keeping pressure on wounds, keeping the girl talking so she didn't go into shock. Other drivers slowed down, but no one else stopped. No one else wanted to get involved, get dirty, be responsible. Camilla didn't care. She was already covered in mud, her knees bleeding from kneeling on broken glass. Her borrowed dress probably ruined beyond repair. She focused on Juliana, on keeping this teenager alive until help arrived. "My mom's going to be so mad," Juliana said, starting to cry. I took her car without asking. I was just going to my friend's house. I'm so stupid. You're not stupid. You made a mistake. But you're alive, and that's what matters. Your mom is going to be so grateful you're okay. Trust me, I'm a mom. Nothing matters except you being safe. It took 42 minutes for the ambulance to arrive. By that time, Camilla had stabilized Juliana as much as she could. The paramedics took over, thanking Camilla profusely, and she gave them her assessment and contact information in case they needed a witness statement. Then she stood on the side of the highway, looking down at herself, and almost laughed at the absurdity. She was covered head to toe in mud. Blood stained her dress and hands. Her hair, which she'd paid to have styled that morning, was a disaster. Her feet were cut and bleeding from running barefoot. And she was 55 minutes late to a blind date. The reasonable thing would be to go home. Text Anna and apologize. Reschedule for another time. But Camilla had promised Anna she'd try. And she'd promised Sophia she'd be brave about meeting new people. So she got in her car, tried to wipe the worst of the mud off her face with the one clean tissue she found, and drove to the restaurant. She walked into the upscale restaurant at 8:42 p.m., 55 minutes. Late, looking like she'd crawled through a war zone. The hostess's eyes went wide. "I'm here to meet Leonardo Costa," Camilla said, trying to smooth her ruined hair. "I know I'm late. Is he still here?" The hostess's expression said she doubted it, but she checked her reservation book. "Table 14. But Mom, I know. I'll explain." Camilla walked through the beautiful restaurant. White tablecloths, soft lighting, well-dressed people who all turned to stare at the muddy, bloody woman, and found table 14. And there he was. Leonardo Costa, exactly as Anna had described. Tall, easily 6 feet, with dark hair styled perfectly, wearing a charcoal gray suit that screamed expensive, checking his phone with an expression that was part annoyance, part resignation. He was handsome in that polished, successful way that made Camilla acutely aware of how completely she didn't belong in his world. When he looked up and saw her, his expression transformed from annoyed to shocked to confused. "Leonardo?" Camilla's voice cracked. She was exhausted, coming down from the adrenaline, and suddenly overwhelmed by the absurdity of this entire situation. "I'm Camilla. I'm so sorry I'm late. I know I look terrible, and I completely understand if you want to leave, but I was driving here and there was an accident. A car flipped over, and there was a teenage girl trapped inside, and she was bleeding, and I'm a nurse, and I couldn't just drive past someone dying." The words were tumbling out now, tears starting, because she was just so tired and embarrassed, and this man was staring at her like she was insane. "And I tried to get here as fast as I could, but I had to wait for the ambulance and make sure she was stable. And I know this is the worst first impression in the history of first impressions, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Stop," Leonardo said, his voice strange, tight. "You stopped for an accident?" "Yes. I know. I should have called you, but I didn't have your number. I just had the restaurant name, and I couldn't just leave her there." "You stopped." Leonardo stood up slowly, and Camilla noticed his hands were shaking. "A car accident, on the highway. You stopped to help." "I'm a nurse. I had to." "Most people don't stop." Leonardo's voice was barely above a whisper now. "Most people drive right past. 7 cars drove past my sister's accident before someone finally stopped. By the time they did, it was too late. She was 18, Maria. She died 5 years ago. Because no one would stop." The restaurant seemed to go very quiet. Camilla stared at him. "Your sister died alone on the side of the road because people couldn't be bothered, because stopping was inconvenient, because getting dirty or involved or responsible was too much trouble." Leonardo's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "And you stopped. You got covered in mud and blood, and you were almost an hour late to a blind date with a stranger, and you still stopped because someone needed help." I couldn't not stop, Camilla said simply. She needed help. Leonardo looked at her for a long moment. Then he pulled out a chair. Please, sit down. Let me get you something to drink. And then I want you to tell me everything about that girl you saved. Please. But you look like someone who saves lives instead of worrying about appearances. Sit, please. Camilla sat, still in shock, while Leonardo signaled the waiter and ordered her water, wine, whatever she wanted. The waiter's expression was priceless, trying to maintain professional composure while clearly wondering why his well-dressed regular customer was dining with a woman who looked like she'd been in a bar fight. Tell me about her, Leonardo said, leaning forward. The girl, is she okay? So Camilla told him. About Juliana. About the 42 minutes keeping her stable. About staying until the ambulance arrived. About why she became a nurse in the first place. Because her grandmother had died when Camilla was 12 and no one around knew CPR, and Camilla had decided then that she'd never let someone die because of lack of knowledge or help. Leonardo listened to every word like it was the most important thing he'd ever heard. I'm supposed to be impressing you, Camilla said with a weak laugh when she'd finished. Showing up on time, looking nice, being charming. Instead, I'm covered in mud and traumatizing other diners. You are impressing me. More than you know. Leonardo was quiet for a moment. Camilla, can I tell you about my sister? About Maria? Of course. So Leonardo told her. About Maria. Bright, funny, 18 years old, headed to university. About the car accident on a rainy night. About how she called 192 herself, was told help was coming, and then waited alone while 7 cars slowed down, but didn't stop. About how the 8th car finally stopped, 23 minutes after the accident, but by then she'd lost too much blood. About how she died in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. If someone had stopped sooner, Leonardo said, his voice rough. If just one person had been like you, someone who couldn't drive past someone in need, she'd still be alive. My parents would still be whole instead of broken. I wouldn't. He stopped, took a breath. I've spent 5 years angry at those 7 cars, at people who value their convenience over someone's life. And then you show up, covered in mud because you stopped. And I realized, people like you still exist. People like my sister needed still exist. Camilla reached across the table and took his hand without thinking. I'm so sorry about Maria. I'm so sorry no one stopped. I'm grateful you stop, that you're the kind of person who would have stopped for her. Leonardo held her gaze. Camilla, I need to tell you something. And I know this is going to sound insane because we just met, but I have to say it. Okay. I'm going to marry you someday. Camilla blinked. I'm sorry, what? I know how that sounds. I know we've been talking for 30 minutes, and I don't even know your favorite color yet. Blue. Or what you like to do on weekends, or anything really. But Camilla, I just watched you show up to a first date looking like you fought a war because you were too busy saving someone's life to care about making a good impression. You're a single mother, a nurse, someone who stops for accidents. You're the kind of person I didn't think existed anymore. The kind of person my sister needed. 5 years ago. And I know with complete certainty that I'm going to marry you. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but someday. Camilla should have been alarmed, should have thought he was crazy, should have made an excuse and left. Instead, she heard herself laugh, really laugh, for the first time all evening. That's the most insane thing anyone's ever said to me. I know. We've known each other for 30 minutes. I know. I have a 7-year-old daughter, student loans, I drive a car. That's one broken part away from death, and I just ruined my friend's dress saving a teenager. I'm not exactly a catch. You're exactly a catch. You're the definition of a catch. Leonardo squeezed her hand. But I understand if you think I'm insane. You probably do think I'm insane. So how about this? Let's start over. I'm Leonardo Costa. I'm 34 years old, I run a tech company, I have a ridiculous penthouse apartment that's too big for one person, and I'm completely serious about someday marrying you, but I'm willing to take it slow. Very slow. Starting with finishing this dinner, and maybe, if you're willing, seeing you again. What do you say? Camilla looked at this man, this successful, handsome, slightly crazy man who just declared his intention to marry her after 30 minutes. She should say no, should protect herself and Sophia, should be reasonable. Okay, she said. Let's finish dinner. But Leonardo, just so you know, I come with complications. A daughter who's, my whole world. Brutal nursing shifts, no money for fancy dates, and a very protective best friend who will murder you if you hurt me. I can handle complications, and I'd like to meet your daughter, when you're ready. And I don't care about fancy dates. I care about spending time with you. Leonardo smiled. And please thank your best friend for setting this up. Despite the mud and blood and lateness, this is the best blind date I've ever had. They stayed at the restaurant until closing, talking about everything. Camilla's work at the hospital, Leonardo's company, Sophia, Maria, their families, their dreams. When the waiter finally, politely suggested they might want to leave, Leonardo drove Camilla home in his Tesla. She protested about the mud, but he insisted, even putting a towel on the seat for her. At her apartment building, Leonardo walked her to the door despite the late hour. Can I see you again? He asked. Maybe this weekend? I'd love to take you and Sophia somewhere. The, botanical gardens, maybe? Or wherever she'd like to go. You want to meet Sophia already? Is it too soon? I don't want to push. But Camilla, I meant what I said. I'm serious about this. About you. And Sophia is part of you. So yes, I'd like to meet her, if you're comfortable with that. Camilla studied his face, looking for any sign of insincerity. She found none. Okay, Saturday. We can go to the botanical gardens. Sophia will love that. Perfect. Leonardo smiled, and it transformed his whole face from serious businessman to someone genuinely happy. And Camilla? Thank you for stopping tonight. For that girl. For showing me people like you still exist. You have no idea what that means to me. Over the next 6 months, Leonardo proved he'd meant every word. He met Sophia that Saturday, and within an hour, Sophia was showing him her collection of rocks, their geology specimens, mama, and chattering about school, and asking if he liked dinosaurs. He did, or he learned to. He never talked down to her, never treated her like an inconvenience, and seemed genuinely interested in her 7-year-old observations about the world. He showed up at Camilla's apartment at 2 a.m. when she got home from a brutal 12-hour shift, with takeout food, because he knew she'd be too tired to cook. He learned her schedule, her coffee order, her favorite flowers, sunflowers, because they were happy. He met Anna, who grilled him mercilessly about his intentions and his life, and whether he understood that Camilla and Sophia were a package deal. He answered every question patiently, and then thanked Anna for being such a good friend to Camilla. He dealt with Sophia's questions about, "Are you going to be my Popeye?" with gentle honesty. "I'd like to be, someday, if that's okay with you and your mama." He supported Camilla through exhaustion and stress and the constant struggle of being a single mother working in an understaffed hospital. He never complained when she had to cancel plans because of emergency shifts. He showed up to Sophia's school play, brought flowers, and sat with Camilla's mother like he'd always been part of the family. And he told Camilla regularly that he loved her, that he was going to marry her, that he'd meant every word he'd said that first night. 6 months after that disastrous first date, Leonardo took Camilla and Sophia to the beach for the weekend. On Sunday morning, while Sophia was building a sandcastle nearby, Leonardo got down on one knee in the sand. "Camilla Santos, 6 months ago, you showed up to our first date covered in mud because you'd stopped to save someone's life. And I knew then that I was going to marry you. I've spent the last 6 months falling more in love with you every day. With your compassion, your strength, your dedication to Sophia, and your patience. You're the kindest person I've ever met. You're the person my sister needed 5 years ago. You're the person I need for the rest of my life. Will you marry me? The ring was beautiful. A simple diamond that caught the morning light. Sophia was watching from her sandcastle, barely containing her excitement. Yes, Camilla said through tears. Yes, I'll marry you. Maman said yes, Sophia shrieked, running over to throw her arms around both of them. Does this mean Leonardo is going to be my papai for real? If that's okay with you, Leonardo said, hugging Sophia. It's very okay. I love you, papai Leonardo. I love you too, Sophia. They got married 4 months. Later, small ceremony, just family and close friends. Sophia was the flower girl, wearing a dress she'd picked out herself. Anna cried through the entire ceremony. Camilla's mother kept saying, I knew from the moment Anna told me about the muddy dress that this man was special. During the vows, Leonardo said, Camilla, you showed me that good people still exist, that my sister's death wasn't in vain because people like you, people who stop, are out there making the world better. You saved a girl's life, and you saved mine. I promise to spend every day being worthy of you, to support your calling as a nurse, to be the father Sophia deserves, to love you both with everything I have. Camilla said, Leonardo, you saw past the mud and blood and disaster to who I really am. You fell in love with me at my worst moment because it revealed my best self. You love my daughter like she's yours. You make me feel like being a good person matters. I promise to spend every day being the person you saw that night, someone who stops, who helps, who loves with her whole heart. I love you. I choose you. Forever. 5 years later, they had 2 more children, twins, a boy, and a girl. Sophia was 12 and already talking about becoming a nurse like her mother. Leonardo had started a foundation in Maria's name to provide free roadside assistance and emergency training. Every year on the anniversary of their first date, they went to that same restaurant, Camilla in clean clothes this time. And every year, they told the story of how they met, the muddy dress, the stopped for accident, the I'm going to marry you someday declaration after 30 minutes. Best worst first date ever, Camilla always said. Best decision you ever made, stopping for that accident, Leonardo always responded. Best reaction to a muddy disaster, Camilla would add. Best woman who chooses saving lives over looking good, Leonardo would finish. Their kids would groan. They'd heard this story 1,000 times. But they always smiled because they understood. Their family existed because their mother had stopped for an accident, and their father had recognized that stopping for what it was, proof that some people still care more about others than themselves. Best muddy entrance ever. Best blind date disaster that became a proposal. Best 6 months of proving he meant every word. Best marriage built on the foundation of knowing your partner will always stop for someone in need. And Juliana, the teenage girl Camilla, saved that night. She became a doctor, visited Camilla and Leonardo regularly, was Sophia's godmother, never forgot the nurse who'd ruined her date to save her life. Sometimes the worst moments reveal the best people. Sometimes showing up late and muddy is better than showing up perfect. Sometimes the person who says I'm going to marry you after 30 minutes is actually telling the truth. And sometimes stopping for someone in need doesn't just save their life, it changes yours. If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments. What score would you give this story from 0 to 10? And where in the world are you watching from? We love connecting with our global community. Share this with someone who needs to hear that showing up to a first date covered in mud because you stopped to save a life is the ultimate character reveal. That men who've lost siblings to preventable tragedies recognize heroes when they see them. That "I'm going to marry you someday" declarations. After 30 minutes are either insane or prophetic. That single mothers who are nurses deserve billionaires who see past the mud to the soul. And that sometimes the worst first impressions are actually the best ones because they reveal who you really are. Subscribe if you believe in ER nurses who can't drive past accidents, in blind dates that become proposals, in men who wait 55 minutes and don't care about mud, in 7-year-olds who ask, "Will he be my papai?" in 6 months of proving every word, and in the idea that the people who stop for strangers in need are exactly the people worth marrying.